Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the City of York Council Planning Committee A on Monday, the 11th of July, 2022. Can I briefly explain? We're meeting here in the boardroom of the Grand Hotel. This is not a permanent arrangement. This has been occasioned by some issues at West offices. The offices are temporarily closed. This is something that only happened this afternoon, and I am very grateful. I'm grateful to the officers of the City of York Council, to our technical team, and very grateful to the Grand Hotel for making this alternative arrangement. Before I proceed any further with the meeting, I just want to check that all parties are content that we continue, particularly the applicant. And I think you'll understand we've done everything we can to accommodate this meeting, given the difficult circumstances. I'm not expecting, yes. Put the microphone on.
Different circumstances. Thanks. Can I seek assurances as to the lawfulness of the meeting? Just bear in mind when the full council meeting was cancelled because Lib Dem and Green councillors were threatening to turn up COVID infected. It was decided at that point that meeting could not be moved to another venue. What's different about this meeting?
Advice that I have is this meeting is perfectly legal, as it were. We have done everything we can to make the change of venue known. That's gone out through every means available to us, and all parties, I understand, have agreed. It's not ideal. It's not an arrangement we would want to repeat, but I think that in the circumstances, we've done the best that we can. I'm not expecting a fire alarm or any other emergency in this room or in the hotel. But in that unlikely event, I will just briefly explain that we would need to leave through the double doors here through which you came in. And then to the left, I'll mention in passing that that's also the route to the toilets. But then there are stairs which will take you outside of the building. And then we would gather in front of the War Memorial. So that is the arrangement in the unlikely event that we have to deal with that this afternoon. I do have a number of apologies. Councillor Wardby is substituted by Councillor Daubney. Thank you very much. Apologies also from Councillor Doughty and Melly, for whom there are no substitutes this afternoon. I then move on to declarations of interest and ask members to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or other registerable interests they might have in respect to the business on this agenda, if they haven't already declared such interests on the register of interest. Councillor de Gorn.
Yes, Chair. Two aspects. Just in terms of transparency, Lars Cram, speaking on behalf of Copmanthorpe Parish Council, as some members will be aware, was a member of the Green Group. I don't consider that prejudicial. However, on second count, I note on paragraph 3.40 the specific reference to Network Rail objections and the request for financial contribution from a developer towards a replacement bridge in lieu of a level crossing. And the decision which is referred to there was the decision that I took as executive member of transport, that the replacement by means of a footbridge was insufficient from the point of view of accessibility and should be a fully accessible ramped bridge, and that is what they are asking for were asking for a financial contribution towards. So in the light of that, I feel that there may be a perception that I've already predetermined this application and therefore will absent myself from the meeting, unfortunately. I'm sure a lot of other aspects which members will want to discuss in some detail, but I won't be able to contribute to those for that reason.
Thank you. This meeting is being webcast. It's available both to watch as the meeting happens live, but of course will remain available for some while yet. That is, as long as we've continued to have a good signal, but the meeting will nevertheless be recorded. If the signal drops out, it will still be there on the City of York Council website. Our plans list brings us to the outline planning application with all matters reserved, except for means of access, for the erection of 158 dwellings with public open space, landscaping and drainage on a site south of and adjacent to number 1 Tadcaster Road. This is pages 1 to 62 of the papers you have, and I will ask officers, in this case Gareth, to bring us any updates and to just introduce the application.
Thank you, Chair. Gareth Arnold, Development Manager at the City of York Council. This, as you say, this is an application, an outline application for up to 158 dwellings, which has all matters reserved except for access. The site is considered to be in the general extent of the Greenbelt, but it is allocated as a strategic housing site as site allocation ST31 in the draft emerging local plan. And the proposed scheme before members is in accordance with the local plan allocation. As the site is in the Greenbelt, there is that requirement considered to be the general extent of the Greenbelt. There's that requirement for very special circumstances demonstrated that outweigh Greenbelt harms and any other harms, and that case is set out from pages 34 onwards in the agenda. Do have a short presentation. So the site, as I mentioned, is towards the northeastern end of the village of Copmanthorpe. Just for orientation purposes, the A64. There's a slip road off the A64 onto Tadcaster Road, the East Coast Main Line, railway line, Askham Bogs, site of special scientific interest to the north, surrounded on 3 sides by the Pike Hills Golf Club, and Tadcaster Road in Copmanthorpe forms that northern boundary as it curves from the underpass under the A64 and into the village itself. The village primary school is here. The village centre with its shops and services, small co-op supermarket, just where my red pointer is there. And of note is this lane known as Yorkfield Lane that you will see, have seen in the papers, which provides an access route to the school and to the village centre, which is either traffic free or is on small state roads and through cul-de-sacs. So there's the aerial photograph, which shows it a little bit more clearly. This area here is not within the development site. So what we're looking at is the area encompassed by the roads, the railway line, suburban developments of Copmanthorpe and Yorkfield Lane here to the south. This is the development framework plan, and in accordance with the strategic allocation in the local plan, it shows a large area of open space to the northeast of the site, and then the housing development towards the west of the site, Yorkfield Way here, the sole vehicular access from Tadcaster Road, this buffer to provide space for both the TPO trees which run along the boundary and also the existing development within those suburban areas around and off Flaxman Croft. This is the building heights plan, which shows a single row of 2.5-storey houses along Tadcaster Road and Yorkfield Lane. This area, which you'll see from the photographs, which is sort of the top of the slope, it's largely 2-storey dwellings, and then a mix of 2.5-storey in this area here. So this photograph is taken from Tadcaster Road, and that's looking broadly east. And across the site, you can just, this is the East Coast Main Line here, and then this line of vegetation is Yorkfield Lane. And then looking, so this would be south. This would be south. No, southwest. So this is the entrance to the speed limit entrance to the village. The village proper is up on the crest of the hill. You'll see there how the site slopes up to the west, down to the north. There's a cycle path which terminates in this area from York. And then again, you see the crest of that hill and the TPO trees along the boundary, and you can just pick out the 2-storey houses there, forming that'll be Bowyer's Close or Barber's Drive up on the crest of the hill there. We do have an update. It's in front of members, quite lengthy, unfortunately, but switches away for these types of applications. It does involve a revised recommendation, but Alison will take us through that. Unless members have any questions, want to revert to any of those photographs or plans, I'll take it back to the development principal plans.
Okay, so I'll just run through the update.
Just introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. Alison Stockdale, I'm the Development Management Officer. Quickly, just a quick alteration to the report itself. So looking at page 17 of the report. So you see the title, Impact on the Openness of the Green Belt. Going down there, paragraph 5.11, the report talks about the impact on openness would be relatively high, given that the site is currently a field and undeveloped, and we're introducing development onto the site. And then the next paragraph, so 5.12, impact on greenbelt purposes. The second sentence is wrong here, where it says it would lead to a degree of harm to the openness of the greenbelt. It should read, it would lead to a degree of harm to greenbelt purpose, and then goes on to describe what the purposes of the greenbelt are and that harm that was identified to greenbelt purpose, which was about causing harm to, as a result of sprawl and safeguarding the countryside from encroachment. So there was just that small change to that second sentence in paragraph 5.12. Right, and then going on to the written update that you have in front of you. I'll run you through these in order. So there are additional representations. We've just had 2 letters in the last couple of days from local residents, letters of objection, but they haven't raised any new issues that haven't been covered anyway in the report. People hadn't already raised. Also an additional consultation response from the ecologist. So part of the scheme, a TPO tree in the southern corner of the site is to be removed. We've had a bat survey done of that tree, obviously an arboricultural survey as well, but a bat survey we've just recently received. So it was identified that the tree is used as a day roost by pipistrelle bats, and the ecologist has gone through the tests required for a European protected species where there is an impact, and has agreed that a condition would be appropriate to deal with this. So conditions covered later, but it is accepted that in terms of the impacts on protected species, the loss of the tree would be acceptable, subject to the details in the conditions. Moving on, amended recommendation. So I think the bits that are amended are in bold. So the recommendation is delegated authority be given to the head of planning development services to approve the application subject to firstly referral to the Secretary of State. So we've added that in. We've slightly changed the wording in the second point. I think it was a landscape management plan. We've changed it to an open space and play areas management plan. And then at point 12 of part 2, we've got the detail of the mitigation measures for recreational impact on Askham Bog. So negotiation between the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, who are owners of Askham Bog, and the developer have agreed a sum of £300,000 for replacement of the boardwalk at Askham Bog and £20,400 towards engagement work with residents about the bog. So educational kind of work for the first 3 years after occupation. So that was that. Then some additional conditions. Firstly, it's just tidying up and securing things that were already there. So an additional condition for details of the play space to be approved and then implemented and retained. Some details of the connections between the site and other pedestrian and cycle linkages. So that's at Yorkfield Lane, which is the southern point of the site there, Gal's just indicating. So that is a cycle and pedestrian access out onto Yorkfield Lane, and also a connection through there. So I think there's a cycle path comes out of the city centre off-road, and at that point it crosses the road and very swiftly dumps cyclists onto the highway. So the suggestion is there that there'll be a linkage through into the site to take cyclists through the site and onto Yorkfield Lane, avoiding Tadcaster Road. Moving on, the third condition was the one that I'd referred to earlier about the bat and the licence, the Natural England licence for the works to remove the tree and the bat mitigation. And then condition 4 was to ensure that some measures to mitigate for the loss of the ash tree in relation to bat habitat were agreed, implemented. And coming to the end now, amended conditions. So an amendment to the plans condition, we just got a revised building heights plan. So this revised plan that I've detailed in bold here is the one you've seen on the PowerPoint today. Condition 7, which is about tree planting, we've tightened up. So as a result of the loss of the TPO tree, the developer is offering to do 10 replacement trees, and in bold we've just tightened up so we're getting an adequate replacement. So the larger trees to mitigate for the loss of the TPO tree, and in addition to the other trees that we're requiring further on in the condition. Conditions 15 and 23 we're recommending to be deleted. Condition 15, I think, was covered under condition 17 anyway. It was duplicating information. Condition 23 is now covered under building regs since end of last month, I think. And then condition 29, this is about self-build housing. And again, the text in bold just tightens up the condition. And it reflects the policy in the local plan about self-built housing. In particular, I think the policy in the local plan does indicate that if plots are being appropriately marketed for 12 months as self-built plots and there's not sold, then those can revert back to market housing. So we've just included that to reflect the local plan policy. Any questions?
Thank you very much. So we have two registered speakers. The first of those, I understand, will be joining us by Zoom, Lars Cram. Lars, can you hear us?
Not very well, so I didn't see either the presentation nor hear what the officer was saying. So if I repeat something, then my apologies. I hope you hear me better than I hear you.
We're hearing you very well.
Okay. So then, am I allowed, Chair?
Please go ahead. As you're fully aware, you have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Okay. On behalf of Copmanthorpe Parish Council, I would like to use this opportunity for some comments and requests regarding the outline planning application on today's agenda. Copmanthorpe Parish Council has not objected to this development in principle. After extensive consultation within the village community, the site is one of 2 preferred sites identified by residents for York strategic housing development in the village and has been part of the draft neighbourhood plan and draft local plan for many years. We are glad that our draft neighbourhood plan features in the policy context of the officer's report. Since 2014, we're submitting several plans while changes in legislation in the city's local plan and new and last-minute requirements by the council's planning department continue to create more delays in finishing the plan. We are dependent on planning officers to get this plan over the line. The officer's report acknowledged that our draft neighbourhood plan holds very limited weight, but that is not no weight, and gives you the opportunity to consider all surveys, meeting outcomes and consultations that have been conducted with residents in the village, which resulted in the overall housing allocation of 135 new dwellings in total for the village, with 75 of being allocated to this site. We would therefore ask the committee to reflect on these wishes of the local community and approve 75 dwellings and not penalise residents for the slow working of City of York Council to get the desired neighbourhood plan in place. Something completely missing from the policy context is our old village design statement that has been adopted by City of York Council as supplementary planning guidance on the 28th of November 2002. As one of the inspectors of a recent planning appeal pointed out, it is the latest fully adopted statutory guidance. It requires applicants, when applying for planning permission, to show that they have considered the guidance, an assessment that has unfortunately not been included in the planning application. Among other things, the design statement includes several relevant design guidelines for new developments. We would request the committee to defer any decision on this application until this assessment has been completed to enable this committee to make an informed assessment of how the proposed development complies with the statutory planning guidance. Beside our strong objections to the proposed housing numbers at this site, we would also like to convey our concerns regarding the access proposals. Tadcaster Road is one of the busiest roads in the village and has a 40 miles per hour speed limit, with visibility issues coming out of the site. We are currently not convinced that the proposed access can keep pedestrians, cyclists and other motorists on Tadcaster Road safe. A robust building traffic movement plan would also be required at the building stage. Yorkfield Lane and the endeavour to create a direct off-road walking and cycling link from the village centre via the primary school to the end of the new development is already mentioned in the report. But we would ask this committee to include a condition to the planning application to link the current end of the path through the development with a proper cycle highway to connect the south and centre of the village more directly to the routes into town, avoiding on-street cycling on Tadcaster Road, Top Lane and Horseman Avenue. Also, a link to the new proposed bridge that Network Rail plans over the railway line would enable a suitable connection to the long-term ambition for the off-road cycle and walking paths linking Copmanthorpe and Bishopthorpe. A contribution to this development would also be clearly in the interest of residents of the new development. Last but not least, I would like to highlight that the current proposal for sustainable and zero carbon development still falls short of the ambition needed for a city that has declared a climate emergency. Why can't we have an award-winning passive house development, or at least solar power and ground source heat pumps included? Any questions? I'm happy to provide further information.
Thank you. I was generous with the time because we only have 2 public speakers, and I'll be just as generous with the applicant in a moment. But the opportunity, of course, for questions. Do members have any questions they would like to put to our speaker? I don't think there are. So thank you very much for joining us, Lars.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Our second speaker, Chris Lee, who is here in person. Again, thank you for bearing with us. It's not been quite the afternoon any of us expected. And of course, I would expect you to speak in support. Are you happy to speak from where you are?
Yes. Can everyone hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, good. Okay. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Can I start by thanking the case officer for her professional consideration of this application and by stating that the applicant fully supports her recommendation. I'd like to focus in the time I have on the very special circumstances which apply to justify the proposed development within the general extent of the Greenbelt. Firstly, the delivery of up to 111 new market dwellings at a time when the council has failed the government's housing delivery test, looking back over the last 3 years, and is unable to demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable housing land looking forward. If planning permission is granted, the site will be sold quickly to a house builder so that reserve matters can be submitted and much needed new homes can be delivered on this site within the 5-year period. Secondly, the delivery of up to 47 affordable homes, or 30% of the total, at a time when affordability pressures in York are acute and considerably in excess of the regional average, the average house costing more than 8 times the average salary. Thirdly, the delivery of a key strategic site allocation in the council's emerging local plan, as well as the emerging Copmanthorpe neighbourhood plan. Fourthly, the provision of 44% of the site as open space, including a large strategic open space, neighbourhood-equipped playing area, and walking routes which will be accessible to both new and existing residents of the village. Fifthly, myriad economic benefits, which will be of direct benefit to Copmanthorpe and the wider city of York. Sixthly, the opportunity to deliver a biodiversity net gain on site. And seventhly, the provision of contributions in excess of £2 million towards local community infrastructure. In particular, in line with local aspirations, a contribution will be made to fund the upgrade of the Yorkfield Lane byway. Further contributions will be made towards the upgrade of facilities at local schools and healthcare facilities. In respect of highways, contributions will be made towards the improvement of local junctions and footways. Finally, contributions will be made towards sports pitch provision and the upgrade of facilities at the Askham Bog. Members will be aware that the applicant has worked closely with your officers for a period exceeding 4 years to ensure that this application can be reported to you today with no objections from technical consultees. In particular, recently the application has been revised to ensure that the proposals are fully compliant with the aspirations of the local plan to deliver a large area of strategic open space in the northeast of the site, which will help to ensure the continued separation of Copmanthorpe from the historic city of York. Members, residential development on this site is widely supported by the local community. As you will have seen, the site is surrounded on 3 sides by existing built development and transport infrastructure corridors. It clearly does not effectively function as Greenbelt. Consultees have not identified any other harm from the proposals which cannot be mitigated. This is a sustainable development in a sustainable location with good access to services and facilities in Copmanthorpe and York itself. It's abundantly clear that the balance in this case favours the grant of planning permission, and I therefore respectfully invite you to follow your officer's recommendation to approve. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members at this point? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you for your presentation. You mentioned the large open space and play area. Will the play area have equipment installed in it for play? And if so, who will be responsible for the ongoing maintenance of that? Because normally play areas are the responsibility of the parish council. They're very expensive. Would the developers be willing to take on the ongoing responsibility for maintaining that?
Yes, in terms of the play equipment, it's what's called a neighbourhood equipped area of play. So it's a quite a large play area that does include play equipment. And in terms of the ongoing maintenance, the preference would be for that to be taken on by a management company. And then that there would be an ongoing maintenance charge for future residents of the development to pay for the ongoing maintenance.
Thank you.
Councillor Pavlovic.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the topic of the play area, is it wise to have it right next to the railway line? What was the thinking behind siting it there?
I think in
As
terms
opposed to further along.
that was a point that was raised by Network Rail. It has been moved further away from the Yorkfield lane as part of recent amendments to the scheme. It's been moved further north, so it's further away from the proposed level crossing or railway crossing. The development framework plan is an indicative plan at this stage, and I think one of the revised heads of terms that the case officer put to you requires a plan for open space to be submitted as part of the reserve matters application. So if there is a desire for that play area to be located further away from the railway line, then that could be achieved at the reserve matters stage.
I do have one other question, not related to that. Yeah, you heard the speaker talk about the energy efficiency, and what are you doing to support energy efficiency within the properties, particularly in the climate, both financial and ecological, no, meteorological, that we're currently living in?
Yeah, the updated building regs that came out just a couple of weeks ago do have quite enhanced standards for that. There's a requirement for fabric first approach to construction. There's a requirement for ventilation, for example, for a day like today. So all of those things would be incorporated as standard as part of the reserve matters stage. I know that the government is looking to increase the level of energy efficiency in homes going forward. I think they're taking a staged approach to that over the next 8 years or so, to eventually reach zero carbon by the end of the decade. So those are things that will be reflected in future changes to building regs, but obviously at whatever stage that the houses are built, they would need to be in accordance with the building regs at that time.
So you're not looking at the moment at things like solar panels, air source heat pumps, that sort of thing?
Not at the moment.
That will be for the developer once you've sold the site?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks.
Councillor Kilbane.
Just a supplementary on that, Chair, did you consider district heating system at all?
No, again, at the outline stage, that hasn't been considered, but it's something that could be picked up at the reserve matters stage. I've seen examples of conditions that have been applied at the outline stage to ensure that a strategy for that sort of thing comes forward at reserve matters, and if members were wishing to see enhanced standards to come forward, then we'd be willing to accept such a condition.
Thank you. I'm sure that's something that we'll want to pursue in just a few minutes. Are there any other questions from members? Okay, Councillor Kilbane.
Thanks. Again, just referring back to the speaker from Copmanthorpe Parish Council, they were requesting a contribution to a bridge over the railway line where the level crossing is currently going in, the level crossing which has conflicted the executive member for transport tonight, I believe. What's your thoughts on that request?
Yes, I mean, there was a request from Network Rail for £500,000 towards a crossing point over the railway line. that is something that obviously hasn't yet been fixed in terms of where that level crossing is. It's a pre-existing issue, I suppose. It's not an issue that's being created by the development, the need for the crossing. Obviously, the crossing that's there at the moment is relatively uncontrolled, and therefore that there is the plan to upgrade it. So I think I would probably agree with the way the case officer put it in her report, that given that it's not an issue that's directly caused by the development, it probably wouldn't meet the SIL regulations in terms of the reasonableness of contributions from developers.
Thank you. No other questions? Councillor Barker, then Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, it's a question for Alison.
Oh, well, can we
So
keep it for a,
yeah,
we're still giving the opportunity for questions to the applicant at the moment. Councillor Fisher?
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the statistics and figures for affordable housing, it says on page 6, paragraph 3.7, that the requirement for 4-bedroom houses in the SHMA is about 15-20% 4-bedroom, 4+ bedroom houses, whereas in fact 76 of the 158, 47.5, are proposed as such. If you then look at the statistics about the affordable housing, then only 5 to 10% of the 47, 48 affordable houses are going to be 4-bedroomed, which means that 70 of the 110 market sale houses will be 4-bedroom. Do you feel that really reflects the actual requirements of the residents of Copmanthorpe in terms of the balance of housing?
The request for the mix of affordable housing came directly from the council's housing officer, so I wouldn't really feel
no, it's
like
not
I
the
potentially
affordable
comment.
housing, it's what's left over when you take the affordable housing off, because of the very high level of 4-bedroom plus houses that are proposed on the site. And once you take off the affordable housing, which are by predominantly smaller houses, it means that the remaining houses, 70 of the 110, give or take 1 or 2, are going to be 4-bedroomed. And I wonder if that reflects what the residents of Copmanthorpe really want.
Sorry, I got the wrong end of the stick with the question there. In terms of the market housing, obviously there is a trade-off there in terms of delivering the numbers that the local plan envisages for the site, and the mix that might be identified through the SHMA. What I would say is that the market housing mix isn't something that's agreed essentially at this stage. It's an outline application for up to 158 dwellings. So if that was something that the council felt strongly about at that stage, then representations could be made at the reserve matters stage to the developer that takes the site on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. No more questions? In that case, thank you for your contribution. We move to that opportunity to ask questions of the officers, maybe clarifications, other things that you would want to pick up. Councillor Barker.
thank you, Chair. We should jump the gun. Alison, your report states that 40 dwellings a hectare are above density. What we consider to be fair and reasonable in terms of density for a site or a scheme such as this?
Well, I think so. So it's 30. The local plan suggests in the kind of rural areas outside the urban area, 35 dwellings per hectare. So we're 5 dwellings per hectare over that. And I mean, it's just a matter of assessing the character of the area. And I mean, it is relatively dense, I think, in the outside, that existing developed area of Copmanthorpe. So I think it'll just be as it comes through with the reserve matters, just seeing what the housing mix looks like and making sure it reflects local character, but it is only slightly over what the local plan was suggesting was appropriate for that area. And it is a very broad brush. I think we don't break it down into any more than city centre, urban area, villages and rural areas. So there's some.
No, thank you. I'm just trying to make sure we're not trying to cram as many as we can so the developer can get proper bang for their buck. And
Is it supplementary? Councillor Eyre and then Councillor Pavlovich.
Yeah, it was just trying to dig into that point in terms of that density will be the entirety of the site, won't it? Not the actually developed area. And it seems to allude that the open space is significantly more generous than usual, therefore the actual developed part. So is that density calculation doesn't, the hectares includes the open space?
No, so the density calculation will be for the kind of pale yellow area. So that's it. So the open space is set at what you can see on there.
Alison, what is ST31 allocated for in the draft plan?
158 houses.
Oh, so they're delivering what's in the that's
Yes.
in the site
Yeah,
allocation.
in the open space, but
Yeah,
yeah, 158.
Cool.
And again, supplementary, you may not know the answer to this, but do we know the density in the adjacent development?
I had it calculated a number of years ago when I first got the application, and I can't remember it.
Don't worry.
It was around that 35, 40, something like that.
Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. There's just one little contradiction in the report, which I'd just like to bring up and just clarify. That's on page 6. It says in paragraph 3.8 that the 30% affordable housing is required on the Greenfield site, of which 70% should be social rented and 30% discount sale. Whereas on page 28, it says that 80% will be social rented and 20% discount sale. Can we just clarify which of those two is correct, please?
I don't know. I'll have to have it. If you can give me a minute, I'll have a look, but I don't know offhand because I can't, without having a look at the comments from the affordable housing officer. I can do that online in a minute and get back to you, but I can't recall. Do you know?
Sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
If at some point you can shed any further light on this, please do. And I'm just trying to just give a little opportunity to begin to answer that question if it's possible to do so. But do go ahead, Councillor Pavlovic.
I suspect the percentages have moved because of first homes. So that 80% social rent has been dropped, but it was to 25%, not 30. So I don't know. There is still a discrepancy there. My other question is, I'm a bit confused as to this £191,000 to the doctor's surgery, or £291,000 to the doctor's surgery. Obviously, £100,000 is going to make a marked difference to them. How are you making that calculations to the 106?
Well, because it's an outline, we don't know exactly the number of houses. It's up to 158 houses. It might be less, and we don't know the mix of the houses. And
so if there's more 4-bed houses, for example,
it will be
with potentially
the
more
higher,
patients.
nearer the higher number. Yeah, just depending on. So we work it out on a formula in the 106. Most of these will be slightly approximate numbers because, like I say, once we have the reserve matters, we know the housing mix, number of houses, then it's calculated accurately.
Councillor
I was going to ask this point out of interest in it. Councillor Pavlovich just introduced it to give Gareth a chance to do the searching online, so I'll fill some time. I was intrigued actually to where the money will go. So obviously we have an issue with Section 106 as it is. If it's not used over a certain period of time, then there is an opportunity for it to be lost. Conscious of the fact that the NHS is not within our control and primary care is not even in the control of the NHS. So putting £300,000 aside for a fictional GP surgery is dependent on a location being found for a GP surgery, somebody willing, but it's an expansion of it. Well, whether they can find the GPs, if in 15 years' time the surgery may close, they cannot find the GPs. Is that money do we just hold on to that until such time as the NHS come forward with a proposal? And then if they never do, the money is lost, as it were.
Chair, shall I
Please do.
try to answer that?
If you could begin by
Yes,
introducing
sorry,
yourself.
Sandra Brannigan, I'm a senior solicitor at the council. Yeah, councillor, the way section 106 are drafted is that we are usually required to have a specific project in mind for the section 106 agreement as to where the healthcare contribution would be spent. Section 106 agreements usually provide that the money has to be spent within a certain period of time, and if it can't be spent or isn't spent, then it's usually repaid. So it can't be used because the idea is it's a project has been identified, a need has been identified for the money, and if it turns out that that need didn't materialise, then the money is repaid. It can't just be go into some general pot and be used for something else, because to meet the SIL test, calculations have to be calculated and identified, and needs have to be identified at the time that contributions are sought.
So it's at risk. Yeah. Just and the follow-up, I suppose, for Alison is primary care does actually include GP services and dentistry, and this specifically only relates to GP surgeries. Was there no calculation that says actually some of that needs to go towards dentistry? Not that it's even harder to find an NHS dentist than it's to find a GP, to be honest. It definitely wouldn't go, but this wouldn't allow any provision for primary care such as dentistry, etc. Was that because it didn't?
I don't know much about this contribution. I don't know how it's been calculated, but it does say that it's specifically for a doctor's surgery. So that I think that would rule out dentistry. So I don't know whether it's for new surgery or for an expansion of existing surgery. I don't know, but it appears to me that it wouldn't be dentistry.
Please do.
So in respect of that, Sandra, if it says, is there something in our 106 agreement that says healthcare has got to be a doctor? Or could it just say 291,000 towards healthcare, which could involve community healthcare, for example, and that way you're not dependent on the GP surgery expanding or giving them the money back?
Well, Chair, maybe because I don't know how this calculation has been done. So yes. I think Alison would be best, if that's okay, Chair, explaining.
So I mean, so the request for this came specifically from the CCG in relation to a lack of capacity for specifically doctors' surgeries in the area. So, I mean, we haven't got the information to assess about dentists. This was specifically, they've given the figures to indicate that there is a lack of capacity, and that's what's generated this request, the requirement. And we'd have to go back and look again if you were looking for something else for dentist surgeries, because we haven't assessed that. No, I don't think we could introduce something new.
If they haven't responded, that's required offence, there'd be no grounds.
Yeah, so we're just saying, so it hasn't been picked up by the consultation about a need for additional dental surgeries. So assume it's not required. Raise it.
Thank you. Are you now in a position to shed any more light on what might appear to be a discrepancy as picked up?
That's it. That's what I said.
Okay. Yes, we have. We've managed to find it. So the latest March this year comments from the Housing Policy Officer said it was 80-20%, 80%, 20%. So.
Thank you for that.
That's
Are there no more questions? Okay, thank you very much. Then we have at this point to move into debate in order to come towards a conclusion. I'll remind committee that under the rules that we now have, we will at some point look to see whether there is someone who would support the officer's recommendation And that being the case, we would vote on the officer's recommendation before looking at other outcomes. But we won't be at that point just yet. We have the opportunity to discuss whether there may be further amendments or conditions or informatives. Over to you. Councillor Pavlovic.
Thank you, Chair. Just in respect of the informatives and the point that the applicant made in respect of us requesting some further plan for energy efficiency, enhanced energy efficiency models, I think we should ask for that for when this next comes back to us. Given that this is an allocated site in the draft plan, given that it's for 158 properties in that draft plan, I think it's going to be very difficult to gainsay the application of the recommendation, subject to the amendments that you've incorporated into our annex. So yes, I would support that, and when time comes that you call for it, Chair, I will propose approval.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. Greenbelt site. I always struggle with these, but this one I've lost less sleep over than most. I think this is a fairly good site. I think it's got plenty of open space. It'll add 37 social rented properties desperately needed to the stock, and it will go some way towards topping up our 5-year housing supply. Not a massive site, but every little helps. So on balance, I think this scheme is supportable. The devil, though, will be in the detail when it comes to reserve matters. And it will be at that point, if I'm still on this planning committee, I should be looking for a very high quality scheme with plenty of solar panels and air source heat pumps, because with a relatively low density, and 40 per hectare is not a hugely high density, there is plenty of space around these houses to put sustainable heating systems in. And I hope the developers will take advantage of that. But overall, in principle, I think this is one of the easier sites to actually allocate in the Greenbelt. Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution. I wouldn't disagree with that at all. And I think that whilst we, of course, welcome the improvements that come through building regulations changes, we always look to go above and beyond rather than bare minimum. Any further contributions? Councillor Looker.
It's always my favourite quotation that there is more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner that repenteth than over the 999 that didn't. So it's very nice to see Councillor Fisher coming out in support, slightly cautious, but support for to build in what is still technically the green belt. I've got no problems with this site at all. I do agree it is a huge opportunity when you're doing a new build to build in your energy efficiency because it's much cheaper. Heavens above, retrofitting is just so expensive. And if you can do it on the estate, then it's really good sense all round. So I hope we get the opportunity to look at that. I'm quite pleased to see the percentage of affordable with all the conditions that cover that applies. I think it's useful to have some good affordable, and I look forward to seeing how opportunities for the children's play area pans out. It's very important when we're looking at developments that we automatically look at those public open spaces and those opportunities for children and young people to meet up and have somewhere to play. So yes, I'm quite happy to go with this as it stands with the amended recommendations.
Councillor Kilbane?
Doesn't feel right when we're all in agreement, but anyway, yeah, no, I would agree with comments we made. Councillor Fisher's comments especially, I think There should be a ceremonial handcart placed in the middle of the development as a mark of respect. The only thing I would like to see is this is a huge opportunity to create an off-road cycle path from Copmanthorpe into the centre of York, because there is a leisure route that you can take that keeps you off-road pretty much from when you leave that site. So I would like to see that the additional conditions that we've got here, I'd like to see that toughened up a bit to include the words off-road or separated active travel route, or however you want to phrase it. I just think we need to make sure that we do deliver that. I mean, then there will people who live in Copmanthorpe will be able to cycle with their kids all the way into town without having to encounter a car.
Councillor Fisher?
Just to reply to Councillor Luck, I just point out this sinner has no great need to repent. I've actually voted, and my record shows it, for 7 of the 11 Greenbelt applications that have come before the council while I've been on the planning committee.
Can we stick to the application before us rather than previous applications or comments? Councillor Pavlovic.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, Chair. I'm still have some concerns about the siting of the playground next to the railway line, and I would like that to be taken into account by the developers when we see the reserve matters. And just to take the point that Councillor Fisher made, it would be good to see that capacity for each of the properties to have electric car charging, if not already installed, but the infrastructure, the wiring, whatever it takes to be able to do it if people want it. Does that make sense?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Do you want to comment on that?
That was so there was a condition, and it's basically overtaken by events because the new edition of the building regulations has that as a requirement within the building regulations, which pretty much matches what our condition used to say.
Brilliant, brilliant, great.
It's nice the government's catching up with us. Yeah. Any other comments at this point? Okay, then I think we can probably, maybe as you offered,
Happy to propose that, Chair, subject to the amendments with the informative about the playground and the other one that the design, energy design, that one. I don't know whether people want to incorporate the cycle path as the cycle footway. I would have no objection to it, but others, I'm not throwing that in now because others may have different views on it.
No, I'm speaking support.
Just on the technical points, yeah. I don't know where would we then have to vote down the thing and then amend the conditions and then redo it? Or can we add it as an informative? Is that?
I was thinking of an informative. Yeah. Just looking.
Happy to add the informative, just to avoid the rigmarole. Then someone has to write the new.
Right. Are you content with that, Councillor Kilbane?
I am, Chair, because it's just this section really. Once you've got it off-road going through this section, it's very quiet roads through Copmanthorpe itself, through the back streets. And once you hit this section, you can be off-road all the way into town if you go the long way around by the river and it's not flooded or Terry Avenue's not closed or whatever.
Okay. We need a second. Are you offering to do that, Councillor?
Yes, with the amended conditions and the informatives. I think this cycle path is a very good informative to have.
So the officer's recommendation has been proposed and seconded with the various additions as described. It may be helpful if we could just be crystal clear before we put it to the vote, so that we are clear as to what it is we would then be approving if we should decide to do so.
Okay, so thank you, Chair. So the recommendation is spelled out on the pages of the update. So that's revised recommendation. with referral to the Secretary of State, the amendments, the Section 106 agreement, prior completion of the Section 106 agreements, and then the conditions in the report as amended by the update with the 3 additional informatives regarding energy efficiency, the play area, and the off-road cycle path through the site.
So we come to the opportunity of voting. That those who are in favour, please indicate. That looks unanimous to me. Thank you very much. That is approved. We have no other items that are urgent this evening, therefore the meeting is closed. Thank you very much.